What's up, everybody? Jose Young's here. We are 15 minutes late on this week's edition of the MMA Corner, but Jeremy Klump is with us as usual. He's the reason we're late, but he has a good reason. He is, like I said in the last episode, he is going to be a dad soon, and he had to build a crib while interviewing a fighter for the MMA Corner. So he wouldn't be the interview manager if he wasn't always interviewing people. So, Jeremy, what's up? No worries on making us late.
I apologize, everyone, but I want everyone to know building a crib is no joke. I'm not the biggest handyman. I can interview any fighter. Not very good at building a crib. I found that out today.
He also got a new laptop, so there's also that. So we had to download all the fun Google stuff. But anyway, we're 15 minutes late. We're going to jump right into it. We're going to break for this week's edition. We're going to break down all three of the biggest events this weekend. We're going to do Bellator Dynamite, that dual kickboxing MMA thing, a whole bunch of fun light heavyweight action. Titan FC 35, which Jeremy's going to talk about since he's been busting his ass on that, interviewing all the fighters, and World Series of Fighting 23, which I will be cage side for this Friday. I believe, Friday. Thank God I remembered. This Friday, so we'll jump into that later on, but we're going to kick it off with the biggest story probably of the second half of the year, and that is Nick Diaz got suspended for 5 years for his failed drug test for UFC 183. He got tested positive for marijuana metabolites, got 5 years. We'll get into whether we think it's fair, but this is his third offense. He's failed 2 previous times. A lot of backlash going on. I'll let Jeremy take this first because I can already see him making faces about it. Jeremy, when you heard 5 years for marijuana, what was your initial reaction?
I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a mistake or a typo or something, because 5 years that's 5 years. That's a long time. I was really surprised. I mean, with marijuana right now in the world it's a pretty big topic. It's legalizing in a lot of places for recreational use and things like that. I'm really surprised by it, especially because, guys are cheating. They're, putting needles in their butts and getting huge, but they're only getting year suspensions usually for that. Some guys not even that long. I find it pretty bizarre and really, really extreme to the max that they'd give him a 5-year suspension. I do not agree with it whatsoever. I mean, I don't think marijuana is a performance-enhancing drug at all. I forget which fighter it was. For some reason, Tim Kennedy's coming to mind, but I'm probably wrong. But someone said, I'll let all my opponents smoke marijuana if they want to. I mean, it's not going to help them. So I think 5 years is obnoxious, not right at all, in my opinion. And I think I saw that Diaz is in this camp. They might be getting legal counsel or something and taking it to another court. I don't know. I saw that on Twitter, so I didn't really fact check it much. But if that's true, I think that's a good idea. I think that 5 years is obnoxious.
Yeah, and for anybody who watched the whole thing, I know I watched. It was like a 4-hour event. They streamed it on UFC Fight Pass, which they tend to do. Like I said, this is Nick Diaz's third offense, so the Nevada State Athletic Commission pointed to that. I know he no-showed a drug test for when he fought in California. They pointed to that. And he was part of that infamous 2010 brawl in Nashville during the Strikeforce event where he fought Mayhem Miller on national TV after the fight was already over. So they pointed to that. There was a moment where I don't think any of the commission knew their mics were still on, and the broadcast picked up one of the commissioners muttering disrespectful this and that about Nick Diaz. So I think this is a embarrassing moment for the sport. It's very reminiscent of the Roger Goodell thing where they just got mad with power, kind of threw their power around. They had no right to. Punishment doesn't fit the crime, when in fact in mid-May, they did a complete overhaul of all of their drug testing things. So Nevada overhauled all of their rules, all of their suspensions. A third offense, I believe, I am 90% sure on this, the third offense is supposed to be 3 years, and they gave him 5 years. So it's not even a year, not even half a year. They're already going back on the words that they laid out in May, where they said before there was no real first, second, third, fourth. They just went in front of it, and you got suspended, you got fined. But now they have first offense, 12 months. Second offense, Second offense, 18 months. Third offense, 3 years. So they're going back on their word. It's ridiculous. And somebody pointed, as a lot of people have pointed out, Anderson Silva also tested positive for anabolic steroids at the end of that fight. 2 different anabolic steroids, and he got 1 year. Nick Diaz had 3. This had marijuana, and he got 5 years. He's 32. By the time his suspension is over, he'll be 37. And I doubt he'll want to fight then, because he has made a ton of money fighting Anderson Silva. He's made a ton of money fighting GSP and BJ Penn. I don't know if he'll resume his career. I don't know if he has to resume his career, but I do think he'll appeal, and I do think he'll win, just based on the fact that the drug testing thing was very awkward too. He passed 2 of the tests and failed 1 of them. And the one that he failed went to some weird lab where they literally wrote Nick Diaz's sample on the urine test, and it's supposed to be all anonymous. So what is something like strike 1? Should have been a 3-year suspension because it's his 3rd offense. Strike 2, like irresponsible use of power. Strike 3, like it was a circus. It was an absolute circus. I don't know anyone who will take positive away from that. And I do get the argument that people have been calling for stricter drug penalties, and now this is what they're seeing, but this is much. And we haven't even talked about, and if anybody didn't watch it, the commission actually threw around the term lifetime ban, which would be absolutely ridiculous. What do you think about that, Jeremy?
I honestly, what you said about Roger Goodell, I think that's a perfect example in this situation. And I think that's going to tie into what I want to talk about too. Is I mentioned, and you mentioned too, Anderson Silva, steroids, only a year. You look at the NFL, you got someone like Greg Hardy who's grabbing a woman by the throat, throwing her on the bed and putting a gun to her, whatever the crazy details were in that. And he got the same suspension as Tom Brady because they were, trying to be all tough and stuff. And that's kind of what this is to me. I like what you said. I mean, they're suspending guys that are really cheating and hurting the sport by, anabolic steroids and all that. And a guy who's, say what you want, maybe it's his idea, he's smoking marijuana, might be dumb. I wouldn't think that you should do that if you're going to be a professional athlete anyways, but hey, that's his choice, and you're going to suspend him 5 years for that? That is crazy. I don't think he's impacting the sport. He's not affecting anyone else. It's not like he's going out there 20 pounds leaner in muscle and knocking someone out after he cheated. I think that's worse. That should be a 5-year ban if you're going to be all jacked up on steroids and knocking someone out. You could kill someone doing something like that. He's not hurting anyone. I just think it's bizarre, man. 5 years for smoking marijuana. I don't care if it's his 5th offense. I just find that bizarre.
Yeah, and what none of us mentioned, which I'm going to bring up now, John Jones test positive for cocaine. How many years did he get suspended?
0.
He got 0 years suspension for not smoking cocaine.
And then he got a less fine. Then.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think they just brought the hammer down on Nick Diaz. It's a little ridiculous. He won't be able to fight most places in America because of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, for as crazy and just foolish as they've been, they are like the top of the commission, of all the commissions, and they're not going to want to go against the Nevada State Athletic Commission. So if Nick Diaz, and the UFC is based in Nevada, so a lot of people are saying like, oh, just have him fight in Asia or on Indian reservations so he can get around these suspensions. But the UFC is not going to go against the commission because they work out of Nevada and they don't want to get on their bad side. So the only way Nick Diaz is going to fight in the next few years is if he gets released and then he goes to ONE FC maybe. I know the former owners of Pride are talking about starting up something. Maybe he can fight Ben Askren. Who knows? Maybe he can he'll sign with his boy Scott Coker over in Bellator. And I know Scott Coker is going to go to an Indian reservation and just make Nick Diaz versus Paul Daly too, or Nick Diaz versus Diego Lima, something crazy like that. But I think it's a little preposterous. Nick Diaz is going to appeal if anybody didn't watch this, it is the exact opposite of the Anderson Silva hearing, where Anderson Silva's lawyer was a little out of his league, and Nick Diaz brought in a lawyer that was ready to go. He did not back down. He did his job. You pay top dollar for a good lawyer. Nick Diaz paid top dollar and got a fantastic lawyer. That guy was not backing down. He had his clients back. He said everything he needed to. He was basically auditing the commission in front of their faces, and he would call them out. Nick Diaz, in his legal right, would say, I plead the 5th, which he has every right to. And the commission took, I plead the 5th, his constitutional right, as disrespectful, a little ridiculous. He has a great legal team behind him. If anybody's a fan of just like that aspect of proceedings, he had a killer lawyer, killer staff. I fully expect this to go to a legit jury, maybe even above that, but I do expect him to win just because he has the right people behind him. They gave him the right advice because, a few years ago, Nick Diaz is just going to come in and say whatever he wants. I mean, if anybody watched the video, he said, I wanted to call them all dorks. I wanted to do this and this and this. His legal team gave him the right advice. Some people, and I do get it, might think saying I plead the fifth every single question is not the best idea, because that could be a sign of respect, but it shouldn't be a sign of disrespect because it's his right. Do you think he'll win? And what do you think the future holds for Nick Diaz? Is he going to get released, or do you think he just waits out and comes back?
I do think he'll win. I don't really know what they'll switch the suspension to. I know you said it's 3 years for the third offense, I think, if you said that at the start. So, I mean, if he does win, maybe they'll get it down to 3 years. I don't know if he'll wait it out. I mean, it depends. If he gets it, I think if they can get it down to 2 years, I can see Diaz waiting the 2 years. But if it's not down to 2 years, if it's that 3 years, or if it stays 5 years and he loses, I think he's going to get the release and go somewhere else. One FC would be sweet. I like that idea.
Yeah, or he can go to Russia. Maybe he'll go to Strikeforce. And for all we know, he could set out the 3 years, come back, and just take super fights. I mean, the biggest thing is Nick Diaz doesn't like to lose. No one likes to lose. But Nick Diaz, as he said multiple times, is fighting is his life and his career. He's not taking other jobs. He's not really getting sponsored like GSP doing Nas commercials or Anderson Silva opening his gyms and everything. Like, his fighting is his career. He's made a lot of money. He might be able to sit around for a while. But if he comes back, maybe he just takes super fights because he likes to get paid. Who knows? It's a little ridiculous. I think we're going to be talking about this for the next few months as this unfolds. Stay tuned on the MMA Corner. But now we're going to jump into positive things because we could talk about Nick Diaz for hours and hours and hours. We're going to start off with Titan FC 35. I'm going to let Jeremy discuss this most of it. This is a Fight Pass card. Is this the second?
Second one. Yep. Titan FC 34 was the first Fight Pass.
Exactly. So for those who don't know, Titan FC signed a contract or a deal. I don't know what the term would be. Broadcasting. They basically are perfect broadcasting, right? That they are being streamed on UFC Fight Pass, which is awesome for amateurs, not amateur MMA, but like the lower promotions. A lot of UFC fighters, regional. A lot of former UFC fighters on this card, headlined by Pat Healy, obviously defending his belt. Rick Hahn, right?
Rick Hahn, yep. Pat Healy, Rick Hahn.
Against Rick Hahn, Tim Elliott's on the card, Steven Seiler's on the card. So a lot of people could be looking at this as a tryout for the UFC, where if you win, you get back in. If you lose, you have to keep toiling. I kind of like that idea of having Titan FC right there where they can get the sponsor money because they're on a UFC like broadcast, because it's going to be all if anybody watches it, it's a lot of UFC stuff everywhere, but it still says Titan FC. I like the idea of letting all these guys that are released kind of work their way back in I like the term minor leagues of the UFC. But I'll let Jeremy talk about this. You can start with the main event, obviously, and then any other fights. I know we talked a little bit off broadcast about some of our favorite ones, but I'll let you handle this one right off the bat.
Yeah, and I like what you said, the minor leagues. I know I interviewed CEO Jeff Aronson of Titan FC, and I mentioned that to him. I mean, if you guys would see yourselves as the minor league for the UFC. And he said he's not in any competition with the UFC whatsoever. He loves the idea of being the feeder program to them and stuff like that. You know, obviously Titan FC wants to be its own entity and be its own thing, but he loves the idea of teaming up with the UFC. He likes that the fighters can go. I mean, they have a clause. I forget which fighter it is off the top of my head, but I think it was 12 days till the main event, and they let him leave for the UFC. And they mean it with the UFC clause, and it's pretty awesome. So I like that. You know, it's definitely like a minor league for the UFC. And getting to the card, you know, Titan FC 35, Pat Healy, Rick Hahn, main event. It's going to be a good one. Pat Healy, obviously, is a UFC vet. He's one of those guys that you're looking to see get back to the UFC. He works hard. I know he's up at the BMF ranch with my boy Felder and Cerrone and them. And they all talk good about him. They love him. They're like, oh, how's he not back in the UFC? So look for him. You know, he wants to – if he gets one more finish, I think he's back in the UFC. And Rick Hahn, who he's fighting, another interesting thing, I interviewed him recently. And this could be his last fight ever. He was an Olympic judo wrestler and Judean, however you say it, for the Olympics.
Judokian?
Shadokian, thank you. And he finished 9th. You know, he's been in combat sports for a while. He mentioned that this could be his last fight, win or lose. So that's also another thing to look forward to. And my favorite fight, co-main event, 10-0 Andre Harrison, featherweight champion versus former featherweight champion Desmond Green. That is my favorite fight of the night. I mean, Healy Hahn, I don't want any disrespect to them. I like both those guys. Awesome interviews with them. But I am so excited for Desmond Green versus Andre Harrison. It is going to be an awesome fight. I interviewed both of them. Funny interviews. They for some reason, they both were arguing about who's the better wrestler, and it got into this really funny back and forth match. I know that on the Parting Shot podcast, they had them both on, and they both were arguing again about being the better wrestler, which I found funny. It's going to be a great fight. Green, his last fight, Titan FC 34, he had a 32-second knockout. Harrison dominated Kurt Halva to win the title. That is going to be an awesome fight. I don't know about you, but I'm really looking forward to that one. I know you said that one's going to be awesome too.
Dude, I am on board on the Desmond Green. I know he lost the belt, but he beat Miguel Torres.
Not to him, though. If you ask him, he gets mad about that. He said, there's no way I lost to Kurt Halva, and I love that.
Oh, for sure. A lot of people, like, it was a split decision when he lost the belt, but at the end of the day, he did lose the belt. So It doesn't matter what we say. It doesn't matter what Hit say. The only thing that matters is those 3 judges. But I agree with you. Very controversial. I can't really remember. I know it was a little weird after I watched it, but
it was weird. It was controversial.
Exactly. I think he'll get it back. If people don't know Desmond Green, he weighs in at 145 pounds, but he's 5'10", and that is a huge featherweight. Don't know how he cuts down all that weight, but I'm a big fan. I do think he'll get his win back. I think this is one of those fun. He is 15-4, but the guy's fighting is undefeated, so I don't think either guy, if they put on like one of the fight of the nights that we both think he will, I think they'll be right back into it. But yeah, I agree. Huge fan of Desmond Green, but also on the card we got Tim Elliott, former flyweight, was on a good win streak, lost to Joseph Benavidez, lost to a whole bunch of other Ali Baglutinov, and Steven Siler, both UFC cast-offs. Do you see this as if they win, it maybe not this fight, but if they win this fight, are they back in the UFC? Or if they lose, are they like way down the line?
You know, for Siler, I think this is a big fight for him. He needs to win it. If I'm not mistaken, he did lose to Desmond Green when he first came out of the UFC. I think that was his first fight, and it wasn't Titan. And that was a big loss. When I interviewed him, he mentioned, you know, that one hurt. You know, he still thinks about it today. It pisses him off that Desmond Green, he said, rode him around. But, I mean, agree to disagree. Desmond Green, he dominated him. You know, so this is a huge fight for him. He needs the victory. I don't know if he'll get back to the UFC with a victory, but it's definitely the right step. Maybe he's 1 or 2 away then with that win. And Elliott, I mean, he won 1 fight since his UFC release, but it was for the Titan FC champion or Titan FC belt. This is a big fight. I think it's hard, again, I don't know if this is the one to get him in, but again, step in the right direction. Pat Healy wins, give him a call, get him back in the UFC. The man deserves it. He has worked his way back. I would love to see him back.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll say about Tim Elliott is the ones he lost to Ali Baglutinov, who ended up fighting for the championship. It was not the next time. Because you beat him at 167, then Ali Baglutinov beat John Lineker at 169, and then fought for the belt in June. So he lost to Ali Baglutinov, former title contender, lost to Joseph Benavidez, former 2-time title contender, and lost to Zach McCoskey, who looked pretty legit outside of his loss to John Dodson. So he's lost to 3 of probably the top 5 flyweights
and he lost
in the UFC.
He lost to Dodson also early in his UFC.
He lost to Dodson. Well. So he's pretty much lost to only the top 5, and he got cut. So maybe if he finishes this fight, he could very well get him. But the thing I'll say about both Siler, was on top 14 with Dillashaw, I believe. The only thing I'll say is Siler's fighting someone who's 8-0, and Elliott's fighting someone who's 9-1. So this is very much veteran versus up-and-coming prospect, and I love those kind of fights because it could be a reality check to the prospect, but it also show that the veteran isn't what it used to be. So real exciting. I know Jeremy is super excited for it. I don't know if Pat Healy gets back if it's another split decision, because I believe 2 of his 3 wins since being cut were split. If he goes on the split decision, I don't know if he gets the call. If he finishes in the first round, he could very well be a late replacement. But he did test positive for marijuana.
That was his fight with
Jim Miller.
Jim Miller. Yep.
Jim Miller. He ended up losing $100,000 in win bonuses because they got fight of the night and he got submission of the night. Lost out on $100,000 because he decided to smoke weed. Ended up losing 4 in a row. One of them to Khabib, one of them to Jorge Masvidal. I can't remember the other ones, but so 4 in a row in the UFC. And you test positive for marijuana. Split decision is not going to get you in. Knockout in the first round. He'll be back. I am sure. Rick Hahn, if he retires, he'll be talking about that on the next fight. Moving on. World Series fighting 23 is this Friday. I'll be cage side. I am super excited for this fight. It's right down the street from me. It's a rematch. We'll get into this in 1 second between champion Justin Gaethje versus Luis Palomino. And when I say we'll get into this, I don't really know why they booked this. It's an immediate rematch. It's not like as for those of you who don't know, Justin Gaethje beat Luis Palomino in their initial fight in one of the craziest fights I have ever seen live, where both of them just stood in not the octagon, the cage, and just beat the hell out of each other. Both of them were a mess. I'll get into the crowd in a second, but Gaethje finished him in a fight of not fight of the night. Like, that is one of the top 5 fights of the year, and probably one of the craziest fights I have ever witnessed live. And I was at 189, and I was at 187. I was at Ronda Rousey's first UFC fight, and in the short list for crazy, Gaethje Palomino 1 is right up there. Don't know why they booked to this immediate rematch. Maybe it's because World Series fighting doesn't have the depth that it's not maybe. They don't have the depth the UFC has at lightweight. Justin Gaethje, I think, is the best fighter outside of the UFC right now, and I am scared that he is going to be in, because all of his fights are wars, and I don't want him to become a Michael Chandler where his brain is 80 years old before he reaches the UFC. And I don't know if he does reach the UFC, but I'm nervous because he always seems to be bloody and bruised at the end of every fight. It is in Arizona. Justin Gaethje is from Arizona, and for those who don't know, World Series of Fighting fighters sell a lot of their own tickets. So he is from a very small mining town, Sanford, Arizona, and he knows everybody there, and he probably sold 400 tickets to every single person in that town, and every single person from his hometown was in that arena, and it was like Justin Gaethje had an army in there. I mean, you could not even hear yourself think, it was so loud during that fight. So if that doesn't get you excited, I don't know what will. I'll let Jeremy talk about this because I could talk about this fight all day because I'm excited. I don't know how much you know about Gaethje Palomino, but after everything I said, are you going to watch it?
I'm excited now. Now you sold me. Now I got to watch it. I mean, I probably wasn't going to tune in. I mean, obviously I'm on daddy duty doing a lot of stuff, but I might try to turn in for that one. You got me excited. I mean, Gaethje's undefeated, which is always awesome. You know, you love when guys are undefeated. And now that you said he's the best fighter outside of the UFC, that's a bold statement. I like that. That's something that intrigues me.
Well, I don't want to say – when I say best fighter outside of the UFC, because I know Usman Palhares, Jake Shields, and everybody will get into that in a second, but they've fought in the UFC. Justin Gaethje's never even been in the UFC. So I should say best fighter outside of the UFC that has never been in the UFC.
I like it. I like it. I'm intrigued. You got me. You sold me.
So – exactly, and I don't know why this is the immediate rematch, because it's like one of those things where the first fight was so good, and then you're just doing it right over. It's not. I don't know if it lives up to the expectation, but I would have liked that waiting period where they worked themselves back, kind of like when Lawler and McDonald fought. The first time was awesome, and then they worked their way back to each other, and then you saw how that fight turned out. It lived up. It was even better than the first one. But we'll see. In the co-main event, David Branch is fighting Teddy Holder for the light heavyweight title. For those of you who don't know, David Branch was also a UFC cast-off. I'm pretty sure is undefeated since being cut from the UFC. I can't remember. But he's also the World Series of Fighting middleweight champion. So if he wins on Friday, he holds 2 belts. He holds the middleweight and the light heavyweight, which I don't care what you say. That's hard to do in any promotion. I mean, Conor McGregor did it for Cage Warriors, and look at him. But I'm saying across from him is Teddy Holder. And the first guy, he is 9-1 from Arizona. The last guy he beat was Thiago Silva, who was a monster in the UFC, both outside and inside the octagon. Maniac outside, maniac inside. A lot of people, like Teddy Holder, was replaced that day. He was like, Thiago Silva was supposed to fight Mark Hamill. Mark Hamill couldn't make it. He had like weight cut problems, got sick. Teddy Holder was on the untelevised prelims. They go, do you want to fight Thiago Silva on like 5 hours notice? He said, let's do it. knocked out Thiago Silva in like a minute and a half. And that was like and Thiago Silva has fought the Lyoto Machidas, the Rashad Evans, the Alexander Gustafsson. Like, he's fought the who's who of the UFC's light heavyweight division for the middle part of the 2000s. A huge shock. So Teddy Holder's getting a title fight. I believe rightfully so. I still think David Branch is going to win it. He's kind of on that Husamar Palhares thing where ever since he's been cut, he's looked better than ever. He beat Yushin Okami. I can't remember the one, but he beat Yushin Okami for the belt at World Series, in the World Series of Fighting headline. I thought Yushin Okami was going to roll over him. I thought Yushin was one of the best middleweights in the world. But I don't know how much you know about it, but I'm excited. Are you going to tune in to possibly see one of the first dual belt holders in major U.S. promotion?
You sold me on the first one. You sold me on the second one. I do know one thing about David Branch. He did lose one fight outside of the UFC. He lost to Rumble Johnson at Titan FC 22. Titan FC, I don't know, 20, 22, one of those ones. I forget. He beat him in Titan FC. But, I mean, that's awesome. I'm excited to watch him try to win 2 belts.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold that loss against him because we've seen what Anthony Johnson's been doing. He's probably one of the top 5 best light heavyweights. I won't hold it against him. Also on the card is Timur Valiev. I don't know his name. We're going to briefly talk about him. One of the best. I believe it's a flyweight. If it's a flyweight or bantamweight, one of the lower cards. I am hating myself because I can't remember. 9-1 has looked incredible under the World Series of Fighting banner, so tune in for that. But we're going to finish the World Series of Fighting with, if everything I said hasn't convinced you to tune in to because this is a free fight card, unlike Titan FC where you have to pay UFC Fight Pass. World Series of Fighting is on NBC Sports Network. Ben Phoenix Joan Fodor is going to fight on this card too. And for those of you who don't know who that is, I don't blame you, but he has actually had national coverage, not for his fighting, but because he actually dresses up like a superhero and fights crime in Seattle. He has the bulletproof vest. He has the outfit. He has the mask. He has the symbol on his chest. So he knows legit martial arts, and he goes out and fights crime. Like, he sees somebody dealing crack, he'll just beat the hell out of you. And he's been arrested. He's been people have antagonized and all that stuff, but he still does it. If you Google Ben Fodor, the very first thing you won't find anything. You Google Phoenix Jones, Rolling Stone's talking about him. Yahoo News is talking about him. Every USA Today is talking about him. It's because he actually fights crime, and he signed with World Series of Fighting when he was, I believe, 5-0 or 5-0-1, because World Series of Fighting is like, we're not only going to let you continue, we want you to keep fighting crime because that is a selling point, and people want to know. People want to see that. So, like I said, if everything I said leading up to this hasn't got you excited, what do you think of a real-life superhero fighting in the cage?
I love it. That's awesome. Oh, gosh. The only thing I do know about him, one last thing. Sorry, I apologize. One thing I do know about him, he did beat a guy that's fighting at Titan FC, because I know all the Titan FC stuff. But Jason Novelli he beat. That was his last victory. That's all I know about him. Other than that, go fight crime, my man.
There you go. You also got Clifford Starks, former UFC cast-off, lost to Yoel Romero under the UFC. And we got Esteban Payan, another former UFC cast-off. So, interesting undercard. Moving on, we're going to talk about Bellator 142 or Bellator Dynamite. This is a very strange card in the fact that we have 2 things that we almost never see in MMA anymore. In one side of the arena, I believe it's in San Jose, one side of the arena you have the Bellator cage, and the other side of the arena you have the Glory kickboxing. So it's going to be co-promotion. They're going to have 2 events going on basically simultaneously. And then we're going to get into the big one night tournament. But do you like this idea of kind of bringing it back where it's just fun? It's Scott Coker is like, UFC is the lights and glamour and money and all the best fighters go. But do you like what Scott Coker is doing where he's just making these fun, interesting events?
He is making fun, interesting events. I mean, Kimbo Slice was one of the events. We talked about that before in here. Let's just think about that. He's doing a great job. I mean, UFC is obviously the top place. Everyone wants to be there. But Coker's making Bellator something good. You know, people tune in. People maybe they laugh, maybe they like it. I don't know. I mean, hey, it doesn't matter. If they're talking about it, that's a good thing for Scott Coker, and he's doing the right thing with Bellator. And that one-night tournament is sick. I love that. That's crazy. That shows how tough you are. I mean, maybe not, because that is kind of dumb. You're getting 2 fights in, but hey, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and to get you even more excited, the people who used to watch MMA back in the day, the Crazy Pride lady is going to be the ring announcer. So you're going to have that crazy signature streak she does, and all the lights and glamour of what Scott Coker is doing, getting into the one-night tournament, and I'll kind of touch upon the kickboxing aspect, because I'm very excited. I love kickboxing, especially Glory. I think that's the best thing going in that sport right now. But one-night tournament, I can't remember the last time. Oh, we had that MMA Battlegrounds. I think it was last October. Joan Carnero ended up winning. It was like 4 fights in a night. Chael Sonnen and Jim Ross, I believe, were the announcers and commentators. But this is a one-night tournament, light heavyweight, #1 contender tournament. On one side, you got Leighton Vassell and cannot remember. Leighton Vassell and King Mo. Yeah, Leighton Vassell and King Mo on one side, and Phil Davis and Emmanuel Newton on the other. The winner will fight later that night, so it's not like they get like they're fighting 2 fights in one night.
I did read
the winners will fight.
It could be 30 minutes. That's the shortest amount of time. So they could fight and then 30 minutes later fight again, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah, and I'm excited. Phil Davis, obviously former top 5 light heavyweight in the UFC. Last season losing to Ryan Bader, very close. Some people think he wins. He's beaten Lyoto Machida. He's beaten Little Nog. He's headlined a Fox card against Rashad Evans. He's beaten Glover Teixeira. So this guy is probably the most known and has the best resume on the entire Bellator roster, any weight class. He's probably the favorite. He's fighting Emmanuel Newton, the big homie, former light heavyweight champion. His last fight he lost, but he does have 2 wins over King Mo. Was not the face, but he was one of their brightest stars, where he was the champion. So I think that is much more interesting than King Mo versus Leighton Vassell. Leighton Vassell is awesome, but King Mo, I think, is one of the best pure wrestlers, trains a lot of people in MMA wrestling, definitely one of the biggest personalities in terms of ego and everything, because he walks out in the crown. He has the beautiful women holding an umbrella over him when he walks out. So he knows how to play the crowd. He knows how to mark himself. But correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll let you touch upon the 2 matchups as soon as I'm done talking. Do you think King Mo and Phil Davis is the favorite for the final round?
Yeah, I do. I think so. I mean, like you said, Phil Davis is the favorite. He's who I got winning the whole thing. I think he lost to Bader, but then before that it was to, I want to say, Rumble. I might be wrong. I mean, oh no, it was to Rumble. I remember John Jones' press conference.
He lost to Phil Davis, but before that he beat Glover Teixeira, and before that he beat Anthony Johnson. So he had that Glover Teixeira fight sandwiched between them.
Yeah, and then I remember John Jones making fun of him at the press conference at the Rumble. He was like, "Oh, where's Phil?" I remember that. But I think Phil Davis is the favorite, obviously. I mean, like you said, top 5 in the UFC. UFC, Bellator, really down here. I think he's got it. I mean, him and King Mo would obviously be a good fight. I think Phil Davis pulls it out, though.
Yeah, and I was actually at that fight where he lost Anthony Johnson. I was like, that was Anthony Johnson's first fight back in the UFC, and he smoked Phil Davis, and I was not expecting that. I thought Phil Davis was going to wear him down, but now we know how awesome Anthony Johnson is, so it really shouldn't be that big of a surprise. But I do think Phil Davis wins. He should beat Emmanuel Newton, but hey, Emmanuel Newton knocked out King Mo with a spinning back fist. If he knocks out Phil Davis with a spinning back fist, my head is going to explode, because that is awesome. King Mo, but again, I think King Mo wins, and hey, King Mo versus Emmanuel Newton 3. Bellator can win that. I do think this is awesome matchmaking, because if Leighton Vassell ends up beating King Mo, him versus either of the 2 other ones, like that's if Leighton Vassell can beat King Mo and then Emmanuel Newton and Phil Davis in one night, he's a star, because that is just unbelievable. He's beaten probably 3 of the top 15 light heavyweights in the world, or 2 of them in one night. And if Phil Davis wins the whole thing, marketing. King Mo, marketing. Emmanuel Newton, marketing. So I think this is the 4 best people you can have in this tournament. But moving on, the main event is Tito Ortiz versus Liam McGarry for the Bellator light heavyweight tournament. So I'm going to ask you one question. 2015, did you expect to hear Tito Ortiz fighting for a title in a major MMA promotion?
I mean, like I said, Kimbo Slice was fighting for Bellator, so anything could happen. I understand what they're doing. You know, they got to sell tickets, get money. Like you just said, marketing, all that stuff. So it makes sense. Bellator's got to do what they got to do. I don't think it'll be a very good fight, in my opinion. I'm sorry if I hurt anyone's opinion. I mean, Tito Ortiz, or anyone's feelings. Tito Ortiz, in my opinion, he was great, and now it's just kind of one of those things. I just don't see him winning at all. I just think it's going to end early.
Yeah, and for those of like Tito Ortiz is going to bring eyes, and I am very, very excited that he is fighting Liam McGarry because Liam McGarry is. I said Justin Gaethje is the best fighter out. I said Justin Gaethje is the best fighter outside of the UFC that's never been in the UFC. Liam McGarry is very close second in my eyes. Well, maybe Ben Askren we're going to put to the side because he looked awful in his last fight, so I'll put him third. But he was number 1 for a while in my eyes. Liam McGarry's guard is unbelievable. I mean, he beat Emmanuel Newton in the last fight in that USA versus UK fight card, I think in February or March. And he basically beat him with just submission attempts. I mean, he didn't finish Emmanuel Newton, so props to Emmanuel Newton for not submitting. But Emmanuel Newton was on top, and as soon as he got on top, Liam McGarry was throwing up triangles and kimuras and guillotines. He was throwing everything at him, and it was just grappling wizardry. And everybody knows Tito Ortiz's biggest strength is fighting inside someone's guard when he gets on top. So I think this is a very bad matchup for Tito. Not only the fact that he's getting up there in age and he's beat he beat Stephan Bonner, who he was supposed to beat Alexander Shlemenko, who weighed like 20 pounds less than him. So I think his run ends now. Liam McGarry should win. I think he fights Phil Davis, and that is a very interesting card. But hey, I'm stoked that Tito Ortiz is going to bring more eyeballs to Liam McGarry because he deserves it. Anyway, co-main event, co-main event will be the light heavyweight tournament finale. The fight before that is Josh Thompson's first fight under Bellator. Did you forget about that? And if not, are you excited? And do you think he wins?
I did forget about it. I mean, I think he lost 4 in a row in the UFC or 3 in a row in the UFC to get knocked out.
Yeah.
Kind of forgot about him, but I mean, hey, this is a good chance for him. Just like Phil Davis. I mean, he left the UFC, all that stuff, and now he's, he loves Bellator or whatever he wants to say. But it's good for him. This is a good opportunity for him to get back in the W's. He's got to get a run going, and you never know. I mean, he could end up get going again, and you could see him back in the UFC one day. Probably not, but we'll see.
Yeah, and like I can't even think of who he's fighting right now because it kind of happened so quick. But he's boys with Scott Coker, so it's not really a surprise. I feel kind of bad that he was supposed to fight Anthony Pettis for the title at UFC on Fox 9, December 2013. Pettis got hurt. He ended up, and I'm going to put this in quotes, losing to Ben Henderson because I actually think he beat Ben Henderson. Then he dropped a split decision to Bobby Green. Again, lost to Bobby Green. So very tight split decision. And then he did lose to Tony Ferguson. So 3 losses. It's up there whether he got cut, released, / tested free agency. We won't get into that because we're neither of us know for sure. But I do expect him to win. And something that I'm going to throw out that neither of us mentioned is Francis Carmont, another former UFC cast-off middleweight, was on this 5-6 fight win streak as a member of the middleweight division, is the very first fight of the entire night. And I'm not saying like the first fight on the main card, the headliner or the prelims, like he is the first fight on the internet prelims. And that is an alternate fight where if there's ever one at tournament, the biggest danger is somebody's going to get hurt. Somebody's going to be too tired, dehydrated. Because say somebody fights 15 minutes and they're exhausted, they can't fight the next fight. They need an alternate. So he is fighting, I can't even remember who he's fighting because I kind of snuck up on me. He's the alternate. Do you think it's weird, or do you think –
I have that written down, so I don't think I remembered it.
There you go. So I don't know how weird it is. Maybe they're giving him time to recover and watch the fight and prepare, but I do expect Francis Carmont, and hey, throw him in the tournament. There's another UFC name that you can market. Anyway, is there anything else that you want to talk about? We've been on for about an hour, maybe a little less. But like I said, we're breaking these fights. Nick Diaz is the biggest story. Anything you want to touch on, and which, if you could pick one fight this weekend, any fight, what is the one? If you can only watch one fight, who are you watching and why?
I am watching Andre Harrison versus Desmond Green. Like I said, I am so pumped. It is going to be an absolute war. These two guys, James Lynch and I talked about it. They might be the two best 145ers outside of the UFC. This could be a fight of the night, and they both could end up getting a call to the UFC. Someone could get to the UFC with a loss. These guys are absolute beasts. I cannot wait for this one, and I am going to give a prediction. As much as I like both these guys, and I apologize, Andre Harrison, I do. Desmond Green, I talked to him a lot. He had a baby. She came early. He's been working hard for her, trying to do a lot of things. He's got a lot going behind him. He's fighting with emotion, and, him and I talked a lot about it. Great guy. I think he's going to pull it out, get his belt back. He told me, Kurt Halva got my belt, luckily. I actually beat him. I'm going to get my belt back. That's not his belt. So I got Desmond Green defeating Andre Harrison at Titan FC 35 to become the featherweight champion once again.
I am going to pick the Liam McGarry Tito Ortiz fight because I love Liam McGarry. But it's going to be on national TV. I'm going to be Cade's side, but I'm also super excited for the Justin Gaethje fight. But I think he's going to win. I think the Liam McGarry Tito Ortiz fight is very interesting. You also got kickboxing that night, and we didn't touch upon it, so I'm going to say it. RFA 30 is also Friday. We're not going to break that one down because I don't think any of you guys are going to watch it. But we got full coverage of that on the MMA Corner. So for Jose Youngs, Jeremy Klump, we're going to sign out. We'll be back next Tuesday. We got some UFC fights to break down. We'll recap everything from all the fights from this past weekend. So for Jose Youngs, Jeremy Klump, peace out. See you next week.
Take care, everyone.